Get ready for a powerhouse of inspiration. Principal Baruti Kafele, a highly regarded educator and a transformational leader, Principal Kafele has spent over 20 years in New Jersey's urban schools, making a lasting impact as both a master teacher and a turnaround principal. Under his leadership, the mighty Newark Tech transformed from a low-performing school to one of America's best, as recognized by U.S. News and World Report 3 times. A recipient of the prestigious Milken Educator Award, Principal Kafele is one of the most sought-after voices in school leadership and equity. He's delivered over 3,000 keynotes, workshops, and seminars across the nation, authored 13 books, including 7 ASCD bestsellers, and continues to empower leaders through his live-streamed AP and New Principals Academy. Please join us in welcoming the extraordinary Principal Baruti Kafele.
And we are live. Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to week 242 of the AP and New Principals Academy. Let me see who we got checking in here, man. We got a lot of y'all, man. Let's go. We got Constance Sherrod out in Pearl, Mississippi. We got Mona Obamolak is down in Orlando. We got Dr. Rachel Edoekit is in Maryland. Let me see what she said on here. I can't wait to hear it. Oh, yeah. Two, she said, your new book will be delivered to me on Monday, and I can't wait to hear the 2 powerhouses today. There you go. We got Michael Benton out in Cincinnati in the building. Grace Castaneda's in Kyle, Texas. Robin Snowden Hotep out there in Fresno, California. Principal Laws Harambe and Hotep from Greenville, North Carolina. Ronald Pugh, Cedar Hill, Texas. AP Patrick Lawrence is in Connecticut. Takesha High is in Virginia. Marsha Poe, San Diego. I got that email, Marsha. I'll be on it today. Dot McKeever Jeter, Calumet City, Illinois. Principal Otis Kitchen II is in he's in Tampa, Florida. We got Dr. Rella Hicks down in Augusta, Georgia. Lysandra Brackens is in North Carolina. Leslie Akintunde, Northern Virginia. Dr. Sheikah Houston is in the building. She had a good one this morning. 10:30. Make sure you check her out. She had a guest, Dr. Odom on, and Dr. Roz Gaskins. We had family in the building. I gotta get that book, Dr. Roz, but she was there, and I gotta get you on here to talk about that book. We gonna do it, but make sure you check out Create and Educate with Dr. Sheikah Houston, Dr. Tammy Taylor every Saturday morning, 10:30, and that's following Sean Hurd at 10 o'clock, all on Facebook Live Eastern Time. Melissa Jones Chunu is in the building, man. She doing big things, man. Got through them first steps of that dissertation, and she moving on, getting it done down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We got Principal Laws in the building. Said, I'm digging this trio. This intro. Yeah. You know, a Principal Laws, I was speaking in Arizona, Maricopa, and that's what they used to introduce me. So I said to them, yo, I need that video, so they sent me the video. So I use it on here. Yeah. So I can't take the credit like I got some production crew and we put together some. No, that was the intro for me to do a keynote out there about a month ago now. We got Lisa DeBose Walker in Waco, Texas. We got Nettie McMahon in Aurora, Illinois. Stacy Joy out there got the 3-week vacation. I hear that, man. I don't know what that is, Stacy. They don't do that in Jersey, man. Out there in LA, I know you deserve it. I tell you that. Ricardo Giannis, that's my man out in Texas. Yolanda McKinney out in Texas. Josh Tovar, my brother, out in Garland, Texas. Otis Kitchen, I said, where we at? The Queen, Kimberly Broughton Kafele is in the building. The queen of the castle, man. The castle. I laugh every time I say that, man, because it ain't nowhere near true, right? Where we at? Lynette Wilson, North Carolina. I'm getting ready to close it down, y'all. Arcella Austria, I see you in the building. Adrian Young, Newport News, Virginia. I said Dot McKeever Jeter. I see you again. There you go. Where we at? Lou Saunders. That was my homie here in Jersey. He was taught in the same school with me in East Orange. So I think I'm gonna close it on the homie. Let me see if I see anybody. I see my guest, man. Thomas Murray's in the building. He's here, but he in the chat, so that's a good thing. Sean Hurt, 10 o'clock. If you missed them, go back and check them out. They're all our stuff is on Facebook and YouTube, y'all. You can go to Sean's YouTube channel at Sean Hurt. You can go to Create and Educate's YouTube channel at Create and Educate. Josh Tovar, I don't know what he got on YouTube, so you're gonna have to tell me, Josh, but you can go to Principal Kafele at AP and New Principals Academy, and all 242, including today's, because we stream live to YouTube in addition to Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. So you can go to any one of them and check us out. I'm gonna stop it right there. I see so much AP New Principals Academy fam in the chat, but I got to get started, man. I got a guest, and I went overboard in planning this week, man. I was just, the pen just kept going, man. So let me say to everybody, I don't do all that yelling no more. Just let me say good morning, greetings, welcome to week 242 of the AP and New Principals Academy. And, I say it every week, but I don't say it the way I say it unless I just get that ghost, man, and I just got to scream it. But I ain't doing that this morning. I'm going to tell you why in a little while. But I want you to know that despite my travel challenges, like I did a 5-hour delay at O'Hare. That's Chicago for those that don't keep up with airport names. O'Hare, 5-hour delay. It was all this rain and snow. I mean, not snow, that's a lie. All this rain and wind in the New Jersey, New York area. So when they finally released us to go, they found a mechanical problem. So now they had to fix the plane. So that was another hour. So I didn't get in too late, and, then had to get up early for something. And, so and that and just life, we all just lifing, right? But I'm gonna tell you something. Despite that, for me and you, I'll say we are still on fire, man. I'm blazing, but I'm cutting back on that yelling. I'm on fire. I'm cutting back, man, because I be feeling a little funny when I do that. I was at let me throw this in here. This was not part of my plan. I told y'all that I'm not closing with my regular close. Oh yeah. I'm getting rid of that because I told you I'll be feeling a little funny when I'm finished with that, right? But I had this big audience the other day, man. I was in Michigan. It's close to 1,000, right? And I'm like, man, how am I going to close this thing mellow? And I broke from my commitment, and next thing I know, I am the number one. I was all in it, man. But they got on their feet, man, gave me that standing ovation. You know what I'm saying? And that's the part that keeps you with wanting to do that. But I'm trying to train myself. So maybe if I get another feeling a little funny, like lightheaded, that'll remind me, because that's what I be feeling. You feel a little lightheaded from that. And that's just been recent as I'm getting older. So I'm trying to chill. My mother, I know she's on, my wife, she's on, and they both, I could feel their energy right now. They're saying, yeah, you need to chill. Now that you just dropped that little bomb, that you're feeling lightheaded. You never told us that part, right? So let me go, y'all. Let me get my shout outs and announcements in. Shout out to the students of Professor Dr. Deidre Edwards at Cal State University. She let me zoom into her class. Cal State University, San Bernardino. Earlier this week, man, we stayed on there. And when I a lot of times when I get on these platforms and it's supposed to be like, say, 30 minutes, 45, and I be going, man. I stayed on there with them for 2 hours, man. I was supposed to be on there for 30 minutes. And we was on West Coast time, so we didn't even start until 8:30 my time, Eastern. Right, it was 5:30 their time. Man, I looked at that clock. It's 10:30, and I'm still going, and she didn't stop me. So shout out to them. I hope some of them are on here right now. Some of those students, most of them were studying to become teachers, or they are teachers, continuing education. Shout out to Rise Up Academy under the leadership of Principal Francois Bayangana. in South Bend, Indiana. I was there in person. And man, let me tell y'all something, man. I gotta say, I told my guests I'm gonna be a little while, but we're gonna get them up here. But listen, I gotta share this with y'all. Hit that share button for me. Hit that retweet. Hit that repost. Hit that whatever they got on there. Tag somebody, text somebody. Hit them Facebook groups, those leadership groups. Let them know we here, we live. Listen, y'all. Rise Up Academy in South Bend, Indiana. It's an alternative school. It's an alternative high school. If you took me to that school and you didn't tell me that I was in an alternative school, I would have never known. Man, it was so impressive. I'm walking around with the principal and I'm like, I said to him, I hope he's on right now. I said, is this normal? Like, is the school always this calm? Because I've been to some alternative schools, y'all. You know, I've had some interesting conversations in the principal's office at some alternative schools, you know. So you know, it was like, and then we went in the classrooms, this class after class after class, and man, you talk about focus, right? Focus. I told him, man, I said, look, I told the staff, because I met with them too. I said, you write the narrative, because there's a perception with alternative schools out there. You know, people talking when kids act up, well, we'll send you to alternative, right? I say, you write the narrative. You could be the GT school with alternative school students that were sent there. That's what I mean when I say alternative student. I'm not calling them that, but they were sent there. But you can rewrite that narrative, and you the gifted and talented school. So when the folks send you there, they sending you up, right? So, but that's a whole nother thing. I spend a lot of time talking to them about this. I'm not going to reiterate that, but I'm saying that. Listen, I say it all the time. I got a whole 6-hour presentation with this title. The culture of the building is a direct reflection of the leadership of the school. I take that to my grave. The culture of the building is a direct reflection of the leadership of the building. That's. I mean, I'm firm in that, right? So that's where I'm at. And they, you know, again, Dr. Francois Bayangana, he's from Rwanda in Africa. Right, and he's just doing a phenomenal job. Shout out to him. If any of the staff is on here, shout out to you. Let me keep going, and then finally, shout out to EFS International Symposium for Youngsters in Lagos, Nigeria. I told you I'm tired this morning because you know, they're on a different time zone. I did a virtual presentation this morning with a lot of children. It was 7:30 Eastern time, so it was like 6 o'clock their time, 6:30, whatever it was. And but that's all right, man. We had a good presentation, and the Q&A about 40 minutes. Man, them babies had a lot of questions, man. They had questions about attitude, about maintaining confidence, about purpose, you know, those kinds of questions, about reaching their objectives, their goals, their dreams, those kinds of questions, man. Just great morning being virtually on the motherland, right? Being virtually on the continent, right? In this case, in Lagos, Nigeria. I haven't been there yet physically, but virtually, I was in the building, man. You know, so good stuff. Let me keep going, y'all. Welcome to the first timers. But if this is in fact your first time, that means you've missed 241 sessions. So you can go to the YouTube channel, AP and New Principals Academy. Hit the subscribe button. Once you hit that, hit the notification bell. And that way you'll always be informed when I go live, which is every Saturday at 10:55. And then binge watch the 241 sessions that you miss, right? They average 2 hours long. So that's a lot of content. It's free too, man. Where you going to find that? Where you going to find 241 2-hour sessions of leadership PD anywhere on the planet? Where you gonna find that? With some of the top-notch people in the nation, like Thomas C. Murray, who's in the wings. He ain't no lightweight. that dude I got coming on here today, right? So, then he runs with a crew though. So his crew, Jimmy Casas, he been in here. Joe Sanfilippo, he been in here. That's his dogs. So now he the third wheel. And I'm not putting it in that order, right? That's just the order they've been on here, right? So yeah, so he coming. Give me a minute. So welcome to the first timers. Hey, y'all, keep in mind YouTube Shorts. I'm back, man. Some of y'all don't know it, right? But I'm back every Wednesday, midweek fire. What you call it? YouTube. I said, what you call it, man? That mean I'm real comfortable, man. What you call it, right? I don't even remember what I was going to say now. See, I threw. Oh, I don't know what I was going to say, but the YouTube Shorts. Oh, I know what it was. YouTube has expanded, given us the ability to do shorts up to 3 minutes, which I hate. I like being boxed into that 60 seconds. I really did. So I'm trying to condition myself to stop at 60. They don't have a timer on there. They just got a progress bar. So I can't know precisely when it's 60 seconds. But I'd rather be jammed up into the 60 seconds than to have 3 minutes. So go to my YouTube channel. Check out the most recent short and check out the other two. I did the one recent. I did it in the airport on my delay, right? So check that out and check out all the other ones. We got a lot of them on there, about 30 of them, maybe something like that. The School Leadership Institute, Principal Kafele, July 15 and 16 in Raleigh, North Carolina. Go to principalkafele.com. Scroll down on the home page where it says Principal Kafele announcements, and then click the tab and go on in and register and join me in Raleigh. July 15 and 16 this summer, Raleigh, North Carolina. We go on 2 full days, instructional leadership. In fact, we changed the name of the institute. I've been doing this for like 7 years, School Leadership Institute. We are now the Instructional Leadership Institute. I have enough content to last me for about the next 7 years, right? So just on instructional leadership alone. So we calling ourselves the Instructional Leadership Institute. Join me July 15 and 16 in Raleigh, North Carolina. Register, go to principalkafele.com and scroll down and click that button and register. Hey, y'all, I'm almost done. Yo, that lighting is messing up my cover. Let me hold this. Yeah, there we go. That look flawed, man. Let me bring that back. Yo, y'all remember this, man? Listen, let me show y'all this. Let me show you. Y'all remember this? Y'all remember that, right? We ain't doing that no more. Cause see, we did that, and we even did it on this side, right? We did that because that's all I had. But see, that's over now. We got the joint right here in my hand, right up here on that shelf, man. It's here. It's real. It's authentic. It's right now on Amazon. It's #1 new release and #5 bestseller, baby. But like, what was it? For 3 days this week, it was #1 bestseller. Can you imagine that bestseller and it ain't even released yet? Releases on Monday the 16th, #1 bestseller. So that means where's my thanks got to go? It got to go to you. That's y'all, right? That's y'all. That's y'all going to Amazon or going to ASCD or going to Barnes and Noble or wherever you buy your books and pre-ordering a copy. All I could do is say, thank you, right? I appreciate you. You can get your copy right now, right? Just go on to Amazon while I'm talking. Get your copy. You got Prime to get it to you. They'll ship it on Monday. I'm hoping that they're good with their word. It's been saying December 16 for the past 2 months. Hopefully they're going to ship them on December 16. And then some people have them because they've been posting them on social media already because they got it from ASCD. ASCD released it. So we here, man. Let me put this up here one more time, man. We here. What is my value instructionally to the teachers I supervise? That's the question. There's no question of more substance or potency that an instructional leader, that a principal, that an AP could ask themselves with that mirror, what is my value instructionally to the teachers I supervise? Let me tell you the question I'm not asking. I'm not asking you, what is your value to the teachers you supervise? That's a different question. I'm asking you, what is your value to the pedagogy in a classroom? Said differently, let's put me back in the school as an elementary kid. What is your value to young Principal Kafele relative to your relationship with the teachers you supervise? The difference between a youngster's success or failure in so many cases is the teacher you're assigned to. It could be a language arts teacher in 101, another language arts teacher in 102, and another language arts teacher in 103. But the one in 101 is a superstar and connects better with children. And by the luck of the draw, one youngster goes to that class, but another youngster goes to 102 and 103, and that teacher is not as sharp. That's where you come in. That's what this book is about. What is it that you're doing to ensure that the teacher in 102 and 103 are just as proficient as the one that's in 101? Because your life chances can boil down to what teacher that you were assigned to when you were in school. Let that resonate for a moment. Let it marinate. Woo! And I'm going to tell you something else, y'all. I'm a victim of that. I'm looking right in my camera. I'm a victim of that. Had I been assigned to somebody else beside who I had, because I'm one of them ones, hey, group in the room, hey, audience, raise your hand if you got a teacher to turn on the light bulb for you from pre-K to 12. My hands go deep in my pockets. Deep. Matter of fact, my fingernails put holes in my pocket. I'm feeling my thighs because I got no teacher that I could look back on and say, thank you. Hey, fam, are you going to be that one? Those of you who are already in leadership, are you going to be that one? See? Or them folks, them kids going to look back on you when they're adults and they say, man, my leader. Thank God. Enough said, y'all. My monologue, I'm gonna cut it short, man, because it's I got to guess, and I've been kind of running my mouth. I ain't been rambling. I'm just talking. Listen, my monologue, real quick. I'll expound on it next week. I think. What are the issues, and what's my plan for correction? We're at the end of the school year. No, I'm sorry. We're at the end of the calendar year, right? We not even at halfway for the school year unless you're in the South. You up here in the North, it ain't halfway yet till the end of December. I mean, the end of January. But as you get to this point, which a lot of times we think of it as mid-year, my question to you, what are the issues and what are your plans for correction? What are the issues and what are your plans for correction? So yes, in the name of self-care, self-preservation, yes, you should take it down when you're on the break. I get it. I get it. But the reality is, if you're really a principal, you ain't going to take it down completely because that building will be on your mind to some extent. I don't know how we divorce ourselves from it. That's what I mean. AP, same thing. Unless you just hate your job, then it's very easy to divorce yourself of it. But I had these I don't know what I want to call them, bullet points that I just wanted to give you to think about. I'm not going to go through this slowly because I want to get to my guests, but I just want to give you this. You can rewind this after the video, after the live, and just get these again. So let me go through them. It's a quick 14. Let's look at the overall culture of the school, right? I'm going to leave it right there. My note said I was going to go into and expound upon it, but we ain't going to do that. Let's look at the culture of the school. So in other words, let me go back to my title for the monologue. What are the issues and what is my plan for correction? What are the issues and what are my plans for correction? So let's look at the overall culture. What are the issues? What is the plan for correction? Let's look at the overall climate of the school. What are the issues and what is my plan for correction if need be? Let's look at the systems that are in place. What are the issues and what are the plans for correction? Let's look at the systems that need to be adjusted. What are the issues and what are the plans moving forward? Let's look at where the systems are absent. So there's no systems in certain aspects of your school. What are the issues and what are the plans for correction? Let's look at each classroom of the teachers that I supervise. What are the issues? What are the plans for correction? Let's look at instruction specifically. What are the issues? What are the plans for correction? Let's look at academic achievement specifically. What are the issues? What are the plans for correction? Let's look at equity in the classroom relative to an equitable learning experience. What are the issues and what are the plans for correction? I could go on with that in turn because I don't have this in my notes, but I'll just throw these two words at you. Culturally relevant pedagogy, I guess that's 3, and culturally responsive relations, I guess that's another 3. What are the issues and what are the plans for correction if need be? Let's look at the mission of our school. What are the issues? What are the plans for correction? Let's look at the vision of our school. What are the issues? What are the plans for correction? Let's look at our standards and expectations that we hold for our students and staff. What are the issues and what are the plans for correction? Let's look at staff morale. I'm almost done. What are the issues? What are the plans for correction? And lastly, let's look at our overall leadership. So let's look at us. What are the issues? And what are the plans for correction? I encourage you, because I know you didn't write all that down. After this video, just go back, after the live, go back to 26 minutes, 25 minutes, and rewatch that, record that, and just go over and ask yourself, where are we? And what do I need to do? Or what do I need to do differently going into 2025? Right? Enough said. Hit that share button, hit that retweet button. And by the way, I keep forgetting, hit that like button. See, we live in an algorithm-generated world now, right? Everything is algorithms, not just the computer. Life is all algorithms, right? So the like button, even if you dislike it, just get them algorithms. So like, let's say you a hater, right? I'm gonna use that word, that Mary J. Blige hateration word, right? So let's say that you're a hater, right? Well, hit the like button so other haters can hate with you, right? That's how we do that, right? So hit the like button, like I hate Kafele, man. I hate his program. I hate everything about him. Well, hit like, right? Just like, and then all the haters will come and hate with you, right? So hey, somebody, you know I'm being facetious. Hit the like button for me. Don't just hit the shares and the retweets and the reposts. Hit like, and I might add, put a comment. Right. I'm just trying to activate algorithms, right? Particularly on the YouTube side. I'm not as concerned about Facebook and all that, but on the YouTube side, give me some comments, y'all. I mean, y'all give me a lot. Double those, please. Right. Hit me, double up them comments for me. I see you, Tanil Rainey. Good to see you. And if you missed my interview with Tanil Rainey, go back. She was dropping some serious gems when I had her on. I don't know what week number it was, but check her out, please. She used to be a counselor with me at North Tech. All right, y'all. I'm ready. We're going one-on-one with an award winner. So let me get them on up here. And we ready to go. We ready to rock and roll. Let's get that camera right. There we go. We got Thomas C. Murray in the building of Future Ready Schools and so many other things that he does that we're going to talk about. How you doing there, sir?
My man, it's good to see you. Before you got rolling with questions, I got 3 things for you, all right? Because I've been listening to you sit there and preach. First thing, it is an honor to be the 242nd person you thought of. I'm just glad that I cracked the top 250, right? Not top 10. I'm number 242 on your invite list, and I appreciate you, brother. Truly, number 1. Number 2, I was all comfy this morning, nice little sweater, but I had to bring out my Principal Kafele outfit to match because I got the dress code in the invite. So I got you there, my Francisco Lindor, let's go Mets, right? And then the third piece is you mentioned my boys, Jimmy Casas and Joe Sanfilippo. The one piece that I want to say to that is because they were on before me. And the only reason I want to say that they were on before me is, like we're both principals, right? And when you think about your sporting events, the JV teams always go first, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's time for the varsity now. It's time for the varsity. My brother, it is good to see you. Let's talk about whatever you want to talk about. I got you.
And as a matter of fact, they got the freshman team too, right? So they got the freshman team, the JV team, and then we got the varsity. I love it. I love it. Hey, y'all, let me tell y'all, for those of you that don't know Tom, let me read this bio for you. I want you to know him. Tom serves as the Director of Innovation for Future Ready Schools, a project of All for Aid located in Washington, D.C. He has testified before the United States Congress, has worked alongside that body, the U.S. Senate, the White House, the U.S. Department of Education, the state departments of education, I should say, and state departments of education, corporations, and school districts throughout the country to implement student-centered learning while helping to lead future-ready schools in Digital Learning Day. An ASCD best-selling author, Murray serves as a regular conference keynote, was named one of the top 100 influencers in education by district administration in 2024. The 2018 National Global EdTech Leader of the Year by EdTech Digest, the 2017 Education Thought Leader of the Year, one of 20 to watch by National School Board Association in 2016, and the Education Policy Person of the Year by the Academy of Arts and Sciences in 2015. That's a lot, y'all. His best-selling book, Learning Transformed, 8 Keys to Designing Tomorrow's Schools, today, co-authored with my man, Eric Sheninger. He'll be on with me in like April, right? But he'll be on. And published by ASCD, was released in June 2017. His most recent book, Personal and Authentic Designing, no, let me do that again. Personal and Authentic, subtitled Designing Learning Experiences That Impact a Lifetime, is also a bestseller. Let me just put it on the screen right quick for y'all before I continue to read. There it is. That light, man, this ain't doing good for me. So there it is. You can go to Amazon right now and get yourself a copy. Personal and Authentic. Let's see, where am I? Before moving on to his role in Washington, D.C., Murray served as an elementary teacher, secondary teacher, middle school principal, elementary principal, and at the district level in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. He is most passionate about creating cultures of innovation where teachers are empowered to create the types of learning experiences today's modern learners need to thrive. In addition to his role at Future Ready Schools, Murray works directly with school and district leaders for administrative retreats, opening convocations, and professional learning days. You can connect with Tom at thomascmurray.com. Again, thomascmurray.com, and on various social media channels by the same name. Good stuff, folks. We are ready. Hit that share button, retweet, repost, tag somebody, like, comment, all those good things in terms of how we use social media. You know, Tom, your resume is quite impressive. Your accomplishments are extraordinary. You've done a lot in this business, and you're still a young man. You still have a lot of road to tread in your journey. So my question to you, as an educator, if I can take your life and kind of isolate the education portion, who is Tom Murray, and what drives Tom Murray's work?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I'm a dad of 2 incredible children that are brilliant in their own ways, but also have significant needs in their own ways. And I look at it as, if I want and expect certain things from my own children, my Paisley, who's a freshman this year, my Caden, who's a 5th grader, if that's what I want and hope and dream for my own children, how do I do work nationwide that every child can have the same opportunities that my children may be privileged to have in certain ways? And so much of my drive comes from that, comes from recognizing in my own experience growing up, there was things that I was completely naive to. Rudy, I grew up in an area where a lot of people looked like me. My teachers, a lot of them looked like me. They all spoke the same language that I spoke. There was, in my household, there was expectations of, Tom, when you go to college, this is what it's going to be. And it took me a long time to realize, like, that is not the norm. And many of the children that I'm going to be serving, that's not how they grew up. And I needed to realize in my own reflection of just looking in the mirror and recognizing there's been some pieces in my world that I had done nothing for, just in the place that I was born, that for me helped me to realize that, you know what, I can help other children and help level the playing field. And it's why in my work at All for Ed, and check out allfored.org. We're an equity focused organization, something that you were on our podcast for as well, to preach that. And so when I think about what drives me, it's recognizing my hopes and dreams for my own children. And if that's what I want for them, how do we help that support all the other kids so that they can live life on their own terms ultimately, right? Yeah. And so part of my drive is that.
Let me stay there for a minute. What is the message to from the vantage point of a leader? Yep. What is the message to a teacher, and how do we convey this message that that, we use it as cliche, but I want to make it real.
Mhm.
That whatever it is we want for our children at home, that we should want it for the children that we serve at school. But how do we make that real? Like, I really want for you, this child that I only have for these 10 months out of maybe my life, but I want the same for you that I would want for my child. How does the leader make that real beyond cliche?
Yeah, it goes that old adage of how do we teach like it's our own children sitting in the front
Yeah,
row, right?
yeah.
I think for me, just like with leadership, anything, it starts internal. It starts with you first. It starts with looking in the mirror as the leader in that. Well, how do I model that for my staff? How am I creating a culture where people want to be? How am I motivating my staff so that they show up to want to be their best every day? How am I removing some of those roadblocks so that they can focus? You were talking earlier about the instructional leadership side. Some of the best principals that I know are working on removing roadblocks, being those supports so that our teachers can shine and build those relationships. But from a leader end, since that's what you're asking, we've got to model it. We can't sit there and preach to teachers, well, build relationships with kids, build relationships with kids. Yet when I run the faculty meeting, we don't ever have time for that. Communicate well with parents, build relationships with parents. But like when you check in with me, I got a 6-week grace period, baby. And so for me, it starts like as the leader, looking in the mirror, what is it that I expect from my teachers? How do I model that for them? And if we're talking about the relational side, how am I modeling that in my faculty meetings, in my communications, and then beyond that, in my day-to-day interactions as I walk through the hallways? And so to me, it really comes down to modeling and expecting if those are the relationships that we want to see, then how do we model that in our daily interactions? How do we model that? And I used to call them, by the way, like the difficult conversations. My buddy, Ken Shelton, one of my closest friends, called me in and was like, can we talk about difficult conversations? That sometimes gives it the permission to like kick the can down the road a little bit. I now call them needed conversations. So how, and kudos to my boy Ken on just helping to shift my own mindset on that. So in those needed conversations, how do we have folks leaving with their dignity and their head high, but at the same time, lovingly challenged where needed as well? And so sometimes that's doing the hard work, having those challenging conversations, even when it's not comfortable. But at the end of the day, for me, it comes back down to modeling for our staff the types of interactions that we want to see. So if we talk about loving and caring about our kids, how am I going to love and care about my staff at the same time?
I love it. That that begs for the fam out there on the other side of my camera. It begs the mirror. Yeah. And Josh, I know I could have cleaned it a little better, so don't worry about it. My guy Josh on here. But are you modeling what it is that you're requiring, that you're asking, that you really want out of your staff? Do they see it in you? Right? And that's so critical. We could do the whole session just on the significance of modeling for staff, but are you modeling for them? Right? Do they see what it is you want of them through you? That matters.
Brody, can we build on that for a moment? Because here's the flip side of that. As good as the folks are listening, thanks for all the comments that are in there. As good as everybody is, as experienced as folks are, and I know you're doing for new APs, new leaders, but you've been a principal maybe 35 years. As good as you are, as talented as you are, as lovingly as I can, you're gonna screw it up at times.
Yeah.
So in those moments, how do you respond? Because it's real easy to point the finger, right, and ask our teachers not to do the same things. But those moments of vulnerability, those moments of humility, those moments like when you mess it up and you're standing in front of your staff and you say, team, like I made that decision 3 or 4 months ago and we took a lot of time and I made that decision and I recognize it didn't work.
Yeah.
I own that. That's on me. But I need your help to fix this. We've got to do this right for kids. And we're going to get it right next time. Like that moment of vulnerability gives our staff the permission of when a lesson falls apart. Listen, they're human. I'm not talking about being poor planned. We work with kids. Sometimes things go sideways, right? In that moment, how do we pick up the pieces and we keep moving forward? Because if our teachers are looking at you as principals, as this perfect person that knows it all, that never made any mistakes, and by the way, had the perfect classroom, right? They can't relate to you. And the same goes for our kids in our classrooms because learning is messy. And so I think when we own it and leveraging vulnerability in our leadership, I think that's a lesson I needed being a long-time leader to finally learn and grasp and be okay with, I think was important.
That last piece you said, leveraging vulnerability, that's critical. That's critical. But if your ego is in the way, you can't leverage it. You're not going to leverage vulnerability if your ego prevents you from doing so. So you got to check that at the door, right? Good stuff. Before I go to this second preliminary question, I forgot to tell the folks what I'm rocking. This is the Newark Eagles. Larry Doby played for this team. He was the first African American to join the American League in the same year as Jackie Robinson, 1947. So I'm rocking the jersey and the cap, right? Enough said. You, as I said in the bio, you've testified before the U.S. Congress and have worked alongside the U.S. Congress, Senate, White House, Department of Education, state departments of education, corporations, and school districts throughout the country to implement student-centered learning. And you attached on that. You were talking about future-ready schools, etc. But I want to get back to them later on. I want to focus on what you said: student-centered learning, right? And my question is a three-parter. What is it about student-centered learning that you were clearly and obviously so passionate about?
Yeah. So as I wrote in Personal and Authentic, how do we leverage students' interests, passions, and strengths? So much of our work, if we're not careful as leaders, can be deficit mindset, right? Like we sit in data meetings and we often talk about, here's all the things that kids are missing. Here's all the things that they don't have from an academic end or skills they don't have. And listen, we've got to recognize those pieces. We got to keep it real. And I'm not saying that we don't, but the flip side is, how do we focus also on the things they can do and their strengths? So we're not leading with that deficit mindset. Again, going back to what I want for my own children, when I think about my own kids and my hopes and dreams, and I think about them, when they were first born, and what I pictured for them, and what I pictured the sports that they would love and the things that they would love. And man, being a parent now for 14 and a half years, it is completely different than I pictured. And as a dad, I've got to be okay with it, because it's not me reliving my world through them. It's allowing them to be who God made them to be, who they want to be. And when I think about it from a schooling end, during No Child Left Behind, we put these kids in 4-year college boxes. And if you don't go here, you're not going to be a success. And by the way, that little CTE building over here, if you don't fit over here in the 4-year college box, then you can go over here. And my Lord, did we do a disservice to children, right? Some of the greatest work I see happening in schools coast to coast right now with pathways and hands-on applied learning. And I think about CTE, and I think that is some of the most personal and authentic learning. That quote of like, I don't want to learn from the pilot that learned how to fly on worksheets, right? When we dive in with we could get into that whole piece. But when I see kids saying, here's the things that I'm interested in, here's things I may want to do in life. I'm watching districts across the country use things like the RIASEC framework. RIASEC framework's been around forever, but it helps kids. I'm thinking about Cajon Valley, my buddy David Miyashiro out there at Cajon Valley, incredible district in California. They leverage the RIASEC framework starting in kindergarten for kids to help to say, here's who I am as a learner. I'm artistic. And then they actually tie it to the world of work. Well, if you're artistic and you love the arts, what are some things in the world that you might like to do starting when they're 5? And it's not about forcing kids into, you have to go into this track. It's not that at all. It's about saying, if here's what you love to do and here's where some strengths are, as a district, here's how we can support you to be able to live life on your own terms. And so the districts that I see it doing it well are doing a lot of self-discovery with kids. Who are they as a learner? And then helping them understand what's out there, because we all know that for our children that may not be able to have some of those conversations at home, maybe their parents aren't in the loop on some of the latest jobs in our workforce, or whatever it might look like for them. When we allow them to explore and understand, and we give them exposure to the opportunities outside to follow their interests and their passions and their strengths, I think we're on a better path than looking at it with a deficit mindset.
Yeah, I agree. So as a follow-up, what would be your message? What would be your words or your advice, your guidance to a leader that's on right now, whether it be veteran or new, AP or principal? What would be your advice to somebody who's leading a school, but clearly there are students who do not have the privilege, the opportunity to be in settings that are student-centered, and instead they're in environments that are very teacher-driven, teacher-directed? What would you say to that person who may be viewing right now?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about a conversation that I had recently with a superintendent that I was coaching a little bit out in California, and it was fascinating to me. He said, Tom, my school, we've been a top 10 high school in California for the past number of years, past couple of years, recognized top 10 academically. And I'm thinking, wow, that's amazing. You're doing all these right things. And then he followed it up with, and I'm not sure I'd put my own children in my high school yet.
Oh, wow.
And the record screeched.
Yeah.
And I said, tell me more about that. He said, Tom, when I walk in, you see every one of my kids seems to have these personal tutors on the outside. My staff is as lecture driven and as traditional as can be. And I said, talk to me about student voice. Talk to me about what your kids are saying. And he said, Tom, that's what I'm getting at. He said, we did a survey recently, and it was, I believe it was 31 or 32% of kids felt like an adult in their building cared about them. So here we have these outside metrics saying, this is what success looks like. This is what it should be. Look at this. Here's this USA Today, whatever it is, they're recognized. And then as a leader being like, I'm not sure I'd put my own children there. So when we think about that, we think about, going to your point, we've got to leverage the voices of others. We all see the world in one way. We get it from our upbringing, our culture, the way, our faith or whatever it might be. You see the world in one particular way, and then you serve hundreds of other lenses that are there. And so when I think about my book, Personal and Authentic, one of my biggest goals with that is to recognize, sure, as an author, I got a lot to share, but it's not about me. And so in Personal and Authentic, I'll see there's over 100 voices amplified throughout that book. Why? Because I'm only one person. I've got blinders. I'm not perfect. I screw it up at times. And when we think about there, if it's the opportunity to elevate voices for me in an author, I'm able to do that. Why? Because my reader gets a better experience. So school to me is the exact same thing. What I would say to those principals, what I say to those APs, number one is recognize first, it ain't about you, right? You're an important piece to this puzzle, but this work is not about you. I say that out of love, not in a condescending way. But second piece is amplify the voices of others. Ask students. And by the way, I'm not just talking about your students that are on the honor society and bringing those folks in. Ask the kid that's on the verge of dropping out. If you became the principal tomorrow, what would you do differently here?
Yeah.
Where are we not catching you? What do we need to do different so you want to be here every day? Right? And asking some of those folks and getting their voices and staff as well. It's fascinating to me when we think about staff as we hire people, we point across the table, we say, that's the person I want. I'm hiring them for a reason. And then sometimes we don't value their voice and they've got a viewpoint. And by the way, I'm not just talking my teachers, and I love my teachers. I'm talking about our custodians. I remember being a new principal, and one of the things that I did, because I learned a lot in my first principal job, I went to the elementary level, and one of the very first things I did is I put together a survey, and I met with every single staff member, every single custodian, kitchen staff member, all across the board, and it was only 20 minutes. And I said, look, I'm going to give you a couple questions just because I want to get to know you. I want to get to know who you are. And so they started, it was simple questions. You became the principal tomorrow. What's 3 things you change in this building? What's 3 things in this building should never change because it makes this building amazing? If you have one strength, what is one strength that you'd identify that you'd put down? And so they all came in, and here's why I share this story. My head custodian came in. Harley, big guy, Harley driving, tattooed up and down, comes in, sits down, looks across the table, and the tears started. And I'm looking at him like, oh, like what happened here? He looks across the table and he says, Tom, I've worked here for 20 some odd years. Nobody's asked me what I thought. It was that moment in time, I think, that helped shift my lens a little bit. Here we have somebody as a head custodian that is the backbone to a building. By the way, who was front and center during COVID? It was our kitchen staff. It was our custodial staff, our instructional, right, our secretaries, some of those folks. And hear me out for a moment. And it hit me at that moment in time. Here's somebody that has a different lens. They're out there during the car rider line. They're helping with traffic. They see kids all across the board. By the way, they see kids for 6 years. And why was it that some of my kids would run to him every single day? It wasn't because of his position. It was because of who he was. But it hit me in a moment as that leader of his voice matters. And it doesn't matter that his role is here on some sort of HR chain. What matters is he's got a viewpoint that he can also make an impact for kids. He can make a difference in the lives of kids. And he sees it differently than I see it. Guess what? He's also living right down the street in this community. He's also an informal pipeline into that community. And so going back to your question, how do we amplify the voices of others so that we can remove some of our own blind spots? And by the way, folks, as principals and APs, sometimes those voices are going to be contrary to what you think and what you believe. And guess what? Good. Because if we're all thinking in the exact same way and all the exact same mindset, then we're not all needed, right? And the diversity in that thought is a vital aspect of leadership. Why? Because then you're not missing as much. And if people aren't pointing out our blind spots, which sometimes as principals we take in the wrong way, and there's great conversational ways to do it well, helping to amplify those voices can help to really cut through some of the things that we need to get back to what we were talking about.
Man, there's a lot there. That's powerful stuff. You know, the talk I did with the children in Lagos, Nigeria this morning, the symposium had a theme. The theme was my voice, my identity, my confidence. That was the theme. But the one that always stands out for me is voice, because I use voice two ways. I use voice in terms of your voice and how you utilize your voice, but I also use the word voice synonymous with the word purpose. So finding your voice, right? Many of us go through life and we've never found our voice. We've never had the ability to tap into our voice to find our real essence that's lying dormant from within. So I'm saying that to say I left this particular comment on the screen because this is the principal I referred to in South Bend at the alternative school Rise Up Academy, Principal Bayan Ghana. And he said, "Good morning, Principal Kafele from Rise Up Academy in South Bend." And here's the thing. I want to share this with the fam out here, and I'll share it with you. We were walking the halls, and I said this on social media, but I know that everybody's not going to see a Facebook post. We're walking the halls, and we're passing students, and he's introducing the students to me as the guest in the building. I think they knew that I was there, but we didn't do any assembly type things until the next time I go. So I'm meeting folks in the hall. So I meet these two young ladies, and one of them was super friendly, like smiling, everything. And she engages me in a conversation which she initiated. So the principal was telling her what I do, what I've done. I've written books and, all that kind of thing. So she says to me, "Are you famous?" And I said, "No, I'm not famous, but a few people in the education space know that I exist." So she smiled, and then she said something that I will remember for the rest of my life because no child has ever asked me this. She said, "Principal Kafele, what's next for you?" Now, she's a senior in high school. I don't know that young people ask that question of adults, like, you've accomplished X, Y, and Z. It sounds like you've done a few things. What's next for you? But my mind went to voice when she said it. I said, see, that's voice. She had the audacity to ask me, someone that had the principal explained to her had accomplished a few things, but where are you going next? See, and I say, but I give, and I know principal wouldn't want me to say this, but I'm giving a lot of that to, I don't want to say to the leader, but the leadership. See, the leadership. I'm walking through an alternative school thinking I'm going to see this, but instead of seeing this, I see that. Right? I walk into a cafeteria, I'm thinking it's going to be chaos, like in so many cafeterias I walk into during school days, and he's sitting there calm. I said, "The principal, who's right here, is this normal?" "Yeah, this is what we do." See, but that voice piece. See, when I have voice and I can express my voice, and as you said, even if it's contrary to you and you, but you're allowing me to have voice. That's a game changer. That's a different place. Yeah. That's a different atmosphere, a different environment, a different culture. So it really matters. So I want to shout out publicly again, now that you're here, Principal. Shout out to you. Glad you're here. Appreciate what you do, your staff, and looking forward to that return visit to follow up on the work. And anything you want to jump in, because it looked like you want to jump in.
Yeah, let me hit a couple pieces to that. Number one, I think it's also important because I'm guilty of times, and I think I know our language matters, right? I'm guilty at times of saying, like, giving students a voice, giving teachers a voice. And like, can we pause on that for a sec? They have a voice. Sometimes we don't just listen. We're not giving it to them. We're valuing it. And to me, I think that language is really important. And I'm guilty of saying, I'm going to give students a voice. Like, oh, they're talking. They've got things to say. Do I value it? Truly, do I see it? one thing, let me hit two practical pieces for our principals here. Number one would be empathy interviews, right? Bringing in students and having real conversations. And I started to throw some of those things out. You know, you became my role tomorrow. What would you change? Are we meeting your needs? What do we need? Like all those types of things. Because how often in education do we do like exit interviews? Here's the student, they're going to leave us, they're disenrolling. We do an exit interview. Here's the teacher, they're retiring. We do an exit interview. Like, did we not ask the teacher for the 35 years that we had them? Why do we wait until the end, right? And I'm not saying exit interviews aren't important. What I'm saying is like, so is the rest of the time they're with us there as well. And so I think really connecting, but it takes that time to sit down one-on-one with a custodial staff, with a kitchen staff. And by the way, principals and APs, like loving challenge, like, do you know the last names of your kitchen staff? Do you know their grandchildren's names? And I say that out of love because in my very first building, I wouldn't have been able to say yes to that. And I'm just being real. I'm just being honest. And that became that challenge of they're showing up as a human being every single day. They're showing up with stories on their heart every single day. And if I'm going to ask them to love and care about kids, I need to model that for them. Yeah. So I think empathy interviews are just one practical way to do that.
Love it. Love it. You know, I wrote something out and I got to read some of this because I see that I just did too much writing. You're director of innovations at Future Ready Schools, which again, we're going to talk about on the back end. A large percentage of the people, I want to give you some context here. A large percentage of the people who tune into this academy on Saturday mornings or watch the videos. And when I say, let me quantify that. Let me qualify that. A large percentage of the people who write comments, because I don't know who's on here that doesn't write, right? A lot of people, they see me live at different places. Oh man, I tune in all the time. But do you comment? What's your name? And I don't recognize your name. Do you make comments? No, I don't make. So but the ones who make comments are the regulars, right? Well, the folks who make the comments to give you that backdrop are typically African-American and Latino, right? Not to say that I don't have anybody that's white that's making this not making a comment, but I'm saying the proverbial 99% of the people making comments are African-American and Latino. But additionally, a lot of their students are African-American and Latino, right? So that means that they're working with a percentage of students who are finding themselves perennially. I've been in this business since 1988, and that achievement, quote unquote, achievement gap that I inherited in 88 persists in 2024. So it's still here. So, and I have to think that the folks who are on the call, same thing. It doesn't mean that we're not seeing breakthroughs, but I'm talking about in terms of entire districts, we have a lot of work to do. So here's where I'm going with this word innovation, right? Director of innovation. I want to look at that word from your vantage point. Give us a sense. I'm not asking you to solve the world's problems, but give us a sense of the innovation that might be required to increase the probability that Black and brown youngsters can find themselves removed from the wrong side of the achievement gap. So in other words, what is the innovation that's missing, that's not in place yet, that we haven't seen yet?
And you said these are limited to 2 hours, my man. 2 hours. There we go. All right.
That's wow. On the whole platform, right?
Yeah. No. So first of all, one of the ways I didn't start today, because I was all jacked up about wearing my jersey for you and Jimmy and Joe, is by first recognize. I want to say thank you to every educator that's here for the time that you invest in the lives of kids, and just recognize that you matter, and truly, here you are tuning in on a Saturday. It just shows who you are in that realm. Number two, I reflect on that question as a white male that grew up in a 2-parent home in suburban America. And so I recognize that my vision, the way that I see the world is fundamentally different. I recognize that there's folks on here that face challenges that Tom Murray has never faced. I recognize that. I see that. I own that. And here's the first thing that I'll say. it took me a long time to be able to amplify that. It took me a long time to truly understand that. It took me a long time to recognize some of the challenges that folks that are here, folks that you were just sharing about, things that they share, things and challenges that they've had that I didn't have. And I think first, as a white male, grew up in suburban America, as I shared earlier in that intro, with folks that spoke my language. That was not something I thought about growing up. I think it goes back to looking in the mirror as leaders first and foremost, because sometimes we'll get the question as well of, what if I'm a newer white principal in a minority majority space, and how do I connect with those kids? What does that look like? Which I really think is getting to the heart of it. So I think number one, like anything in leadership, it starts with us. I love that you're pulling a mirror right off the desk. Like, I love that. It starts with us looking into us. You know, at All for Ed, I encourage you to check it out. It's all the number 4 ED. That's the organization that I got recruited from about 10 years ago now, equity focused organization. And part of it is we work from classroom to Congress. So we'll work with school and district leaders across the country. And I'll have colleagues that are on the Hill every day working with the White House, the Senate, and all those folks as well. Second is recognizing the absolute needs and disparities that are absolutely out there. When we look at like disparities in funding, when we look at, and I'm talking from a federal level, from a state level, we dropped a Title I report that shows that like the money for Title I nationwide actually doesn't really go where it should go. Absolutely fascinating stuff. I think looking at like the absolute disparities that we face in a given day. So I would say for any educator that, especially that looks like me and is teaching an environment that's maybe more suburban, is recognize the privileges that you have as well. You know, I keynoted the Mississippi Ed Tech Conference a number of years ago. It was about 2018, 2019. And I went out to dinner with lots of folks that are serving in many schools that didn't really resemble what I had led. They were all jacked up the night before, 2019. And they said, you know, Tom, we're so excited because we're getting our teacher laptops. And what hit me was like, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. But what hit me was I was in a district where I had that 19 years prior.
Yeah.
And man, the disparities are very, very real.
Yeah.
So I think it begins, number one, with looking in the mirror, looking at each one of us. Number two, it looks at recognizing that the disparities absolutely exist. We cannot be blind to that. We cannot be naive to that. And then number three, going back to meeting people where they are, right? I think it's crying out for any sort of support that can be had. And I think from a leadership end is you are going to be the biggest advocate for your building. You are going to be the one that's doing everything in your power to bring in any sort of resources, any sort of tools. I recognize in both buildings that I was a principal at before before we built the new one, there were buildings that were over 50 years old. They didn't have that air conditioning. And I think even from a physical structure end, the disparities are so vast between so many of our urban schools and other places there. And so I think it's on your end, making those connections as well of people that can support you. I know for me as an individual, when I think about my own growth in the area of working with Black and brown students, connecting with folks, I think for me, it's really also who are the people that are influencing my world and my life. And a challenge for all of you as principals and APs that are listening, I'd say pick up your phone right now, look at your last 10 text messages. What do those people all have in common? Mm-hmm. What differences do you see? Who in there is challenging your thinking or helping you grow as an individual? And so when I pick up the phone and I call a Ken Shelton, a Marlon Stiles, a Dwight Carter, some of my best and closest friends, Jimmy Casas, people that grew up in different environments and have different life experiences for me, it challenges my thinking. And so then there's been some times where things happen in our nation that I said, you know, I'm looking at it as one lens as that white male. Maybe I'm off in the way that I see the world. Maybe my upbringing. Why do people feel so passionately on this side of whatever that side may be? And so looking at it of what can I learn from others that have differences than me? And what can I learn from others that are serving students in different ways? So I would say the next piece would be growing your network of people that will challenge you and people that will love you at the same time to give you ideas and strategies, support that may not be on your radar. Because for me as a professional, that's something that I've needed. That's something I've needed, you know, and one, just to give you a specific example, I remember when my first administrative position, I became a principal when I was 27 and I was one of the youngest, 28, excuse me, one of the youngest principals in Pennsylvania at the time. And in retrospect, I wish I spent even more time learning before I was there. I was put in a position where I was given an opportunity. And there I was that first year. And at the end of the first year, I was in a position where as an AP of a middle school, had about 1,200 kids. For whatever reason, at that point in time, I had to bring the kids down and talk to them about their lunch debts. Like, we could go into all that. I know that's a whole other piece. And I'm sitting across from this one student, and I brought her down. I said, "Hey, Liz." And Liz was the kind of student that every person in that building knew who she was. Not always for the greatest reasons, but we had a pretty good relationship. And I said, "Liz," I said, "I got to talk to you about, here's from the cafeteria." And I could see the anger building. And she starts to lose it. She said, "Mr. Murray, what do you want me to do? I can't work. I'm 13 years old. My mom won't sign that paperwork. What do you expect from me? And it hit me in that. I mean, she wasn't being disrespectful. In that moment, it hit me that I was serving so many students. And I don't say this out of ego. Never in my world growing up did I show up at a lunch line worried that they were going to look at me and say, "There's no money in your account." I never worried about that. And that's not pride or ego. That hit me across the face saying, "Man, you are serving students in a way that they're fighting battles that you've never faced." And so part of my recommendation to my principals and my APs here, I call that some of the hidden stories within. And personal authentic, I talk about the hidden stories within. Some people call it the invisible backpack and those kinds of things. And by the way, sometimes that backpack is not so invisible, right? And so when we think about some of those pieces, having empathy for others and truly looking yourself in the mirror and saying, like, where are your blind spots as leaders? What are you missing? You see that world in one particular way. How can people around you support you in a loving way to call you in, to support you, so to help change your mindset a little bit? Man, we could talk about that one for hours. And I will also say, for me, don't ever listen to only one voice, only one person. Part of the reason you've had 241 other people on, right, is because they see the world in different ways and their voices matter too. And I think, growing your network through things like this, I think, is absolutely imperative.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to keep moving. Folks, I want to put this book on the screen. This is Tom's latest book, Personal and Authentic: Designing Learning Experiences That Impact a Lifetime. I want to read something from this, and then I want to go from there. I'm on page 43, chapter 3, and it reads, bear with me, y'all, just two quick short paragraphs. What's your story? What are the life experiences that are core to who you are? What are the things in life that have molded your lens and impacted the way you see the world? How does your unique story impact your work as an educator? The use of story, one of the most powerful tools since the beginning of mankind, gives insight into all those who seek to understand. The next time you have a few extra minutes, find a class composite from a previous school year. As you look at the class picture, what comes to mind? As you look at their faces, what is it you remember? What were the life stories that made those students who they were? How did those stories impact them as learners? My guess is you may not remember that particular picture day, but you will remember many stories behind the moments spent with those kids. I couldn't have said it better. As I was going through the book, that was probably the part that resonated with me most, because stories mean so much to me. My keynotes and workshops are comprised of a zillion different stories, and people always telling me, "Man, I can't get enough of your stories because I can relate to them. I can identify with them, etc." So talk to us. I got a three-parter for you. Talk to us about the significance of knowing and understanding the stories of the learners.
Oh, again, I'm going to try and keep this as real when I speak. One of the stories that I share, and there is such immense value. If you're listening, I encourage you to check up research behind story and what happens in the brain and the way that you connect and what happens in the brain with neurons firing and all the pieces. So one of the stories I share there in chapter 3 is when I keynote, I'll put data on the screen. And the data simply says this: you're going to be getting a child tomorrow. Here's what you know. The attendance information has shown up. In the past 14 months, this child's been absent 35 times. In the past 14 months, this child's been tardy 20 times. And I'll ask folks, all right, I want you to stop. I want you to turn to your neighbor real quick. What judgments, just keep it real, what judgments might people make about the kid, about the workload, about academics, about behavior, about the parents, about what home life is like? And I've asked this question to tens of thousands of educators over the past couple of years, and no surprises of what comes back. And I'll go around the room. Let's talk about the kid first. Kid's lazy. Kid doesn't care. Kid doesn't want to be there. Kid's going to be academically low. Parents are a mess. Parents don't care. Parents don't value what we do. Probably behavior problems. And we go through and we pull it all out. And then I go to the next slide and I'll share that, yeah, that's my daughter. And the whole room goes, oh. And then, of course, I got to break the ice a little bit and say, like, parents are a mess. Like, thanks for the shout out. I appreciate y'all. Thanks for thinking of me, right? And then I tell you the story. Yeah. And I share, what if I told you that every one of those 35 absences, every single one, we were 2 hours from our home, as my daughter was the first child in the Northeast to undergo a new food allergy therapy called OIT for sesame seeds? What if I told you we almost lost her 3 times prior to that? What if I told you 19 of the 20 tardies, one of them, we were just late. Sorry, sign the paperwork for you. All right, principal. What if I told you because of those 14 months, because of those 35 absences, she drove 10,000 miles she didn't want to. She spent 180 hours in a car she didn't want to. Multiple doctors said it was the highest level of an allergen they had ever seen. But because of those 14 months, there's 35 tardies, plus every other day that kids weren't in school, that the doctor's office was open. She now eats the equivalent of 2,000 seeds of sesame in her daily dose. She can totally free eat whatever she wants. Wow. It's the power of the story. Yeah. But here's the flip side. How quickly do we judge? So your brain judges naturally, and judging in and of itself isn't inherently a bad thing. What we do with it can be a very bad thing, but your brain is wired to make connections. Your brain is wired to make connections to previous experiences. And so when we put that out there, we start to say, oh, this kid's going to be a pain. This kid's not going to be able to do the work. This kid's going to be academic low. My daughter's actually the opposite of pretty much every one of those pieces that we would have had. But then when you know the story, your mindset shifts. And so I ask you as APs and principals to reflect. You know exactly what I'm talking about, but here's the flip side. How quickly can we judge? How quickly is a kid sitting in our office on the 33rd time, on the 32nd day of school? You do the math, right? And you make these, and I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. And we're going right at them. And do we really get to know the story? Now, here's the thing. I also want to pair that with, just because folks have been through something, it doesn't mean we lower our expectations. Because if that's the case, now we're part of the problem, right? And so part of what I wrote in Personal Authentic is the difference between making a judgment and having empathy is understanding the story. And so how do we get to know the stories of our people? Let me give you 2 practical ideas really quick that I've seen from teachers, my daughter Paisley's teachers. In 5th grade, Mrs. K, it was awesome. Here's what she said, and principals steal this. Mrs. K said, very first night of school, by the way, she said, moms, dads, grandparents, guardians, you've got a homework assignment too. Here's the prompt. You can write 1 sentence or you can write 10 pages. What makes your kid bold and courageous? I love that. You know why? What does that tell parents, by the way? I know your kid's got greatness in there. Tell me about it. Yeah. You know, I wrote about what I just told you about. So literally on day 2, my daughter's teacher had some insight into the journey that she had been on. She'd go for the next 2.5 years for tree nuts and do that as well. Why? Because she asked. She gave an opportunity. In 6th grade, Mrs. DeLuca, an amazing language arts teacher, see, Paisley's a really introverted kid. She's a really quiet kid. She really pushes herself academically, incredible kid. And one of the questions she hadn't really ever asked me much of, like, Dad, do you want to read what I wrote over here? It's just who she is. And she said she comes home one day in 6th grade and says, Daddy, do you want to read my essay? And I was like, honey, like, yeah, I'd love to. What did you write about? What was the prompt? And the prompt was this: if you really knew me, you would know that ... A wide open window from a teacher to a kid to say, tell me anything that you want. And by the way, they're not going to open up if there's not trust. They're not going to open up in an environment of fear. And so principals, my challenge for you in a loving way is your teachers are the same way. They're not going to open up in an environment of fear. They're only going to open up and connect in an environment of trust. So as principals, if we're saying, I got an open door policy, my door is open, you can come in whenever you want, and nobody ever shows up, you might want to reflect on that, right? And so that goes down to creating cultures of trust, cultures of empathy, and cultures of love in our people. And it doesn't mean we never have the needed conversations when we need to have them, because those cultures have high expectations for all of us, and high expectations for all of our learners, regardless of their zip code, is a key to success.
Isn't there something, open door policy, and nobody shows up? It speaks volumes. That's a whole master class. It speaks volumes. So therefore, given everything you just gave us, what are the implications for the leadership as it relates to those stories and being knowledgeable, conversing in stories of young people? You know, and now let me throw this in here. My ego for all of my career wanted to find a school of about 3,000 or 4,000 students and become the principal there. But I knew that my leadership style would never work in a building like that, because I prided myself on knowing every student in the building. I need 1,000 or less. That way I can know your name and I can know your story. But with 3,000, 4,000, yeah, but I have my chest out. I led and turned around a school of 3,000 and 4,000, but the youngsters in the building may have been so impersonal for me, with the exception of a handful, that I made the decision not to lead those schools, right? Because the story was so significant for me as the leader, as a hands-on leader. So with that said, let me go back to the question then. What are the implications for leaders? Like what is their role toward accentuating the need to know the stories of our young people?
So let me give you a practical example, practical idea principles, one that I share in Personal and Authentic, one that I saw in an article online before I wrote it and said that captures to me. So there was a middle school out in Colorado, I believe, if I remember correctly. And in Colorado, what they did was the principal brought every adult in the building together. I'm talking again, every custodian, every support staff member. And what they did is they put all around the room, every single child, their names, and they listed them all out. And then they broke it into categories. First category is, I can recognize that child by name. If I say that name, I can picture who that kid is. Second child is, I can talk about that child's academics. I know where they're strong, where some of their needs are. Third part was, I can talk about what that child enjoys outside of school, what they love to do, what their passions are. And they gave everybody a permanent marker, and they said, we want you to go around the room. We're going to take some times, and we want you to put a mark as to what you can honestly say that you could identify. Here's this student. I know these 3 things. You're putting 3 marks. And they went all around the room. And here's what came back. It's what I would say would probably come back for the vast majority of our schools. Your high flyers, everybody knew everything about. The kid that's winning every award, they're the first chair in the band, they're playing the quarterback of the football team. Like, everybody knew who they were. Some of our highest need kids, everybody knew who they were. And then there was a majority of kids, a huge part of kids, that was by name, by face. That's it.
Yeah.
And the principal stepped back and says, what does this tell us? How do we know? One of my great friends, Dr. Susan Enfield, retired superintendent, one of the best superintendents I believe this country has ever seen, one of the most equity-focused superintendents you would ever know. Incredible, incredible female visionary leader. Unbelievable. One of the things that I love that she did is their tagline in Highline Public Schools when she was in Highline, their whole motto is, we are going to know every child, or I should say each child. I prefer that verbiage. We are going to know each child.
My word, each.
By name, by face, and by need. What do they need? And I'm not talking about deficits. What do they need when they leave us to be successful? How are we going to set them up for success? And can we say we know every child in our building, going to where you started this, by name, by face, by need? And I agree with you. When I was an elementary principal, I had 427 kids. And I will tell you, I knew every one of them by the time I left that elementary building. To be totally real, when I was a secondary principal, that was not the case. It is a challenge. So here's my challenge, because I know there's folks listening in. You got 4,000 kids at your high school. I get the reality of that, but you know what? There's 5 or 6 of you, or 4 or 5, whatever that looks like. As a team, can we get to know every child by name, by face, by what they need as well? And that goes back to recognizing where I said earlier about my own children. They're all very different. Their needs are very different. And how do we then get to build relationships like that? I also know, principals, here's the other piece, is this isn't just about you. It's not a mindset of just you. This is how do we create that mindset with other staff members? One other piece, I think there's that we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. One other piece that I think needs to be added to that is the sense of belonging, right? We can include, but it doesn't mean that person actually feels like they belong. I can invite you, Baruti, to my party, but when you show up, maybe you got access, but you don't feel like you belong there. You don't feel that. And I think, how do we create that sense of belonging in our buildings as well, to recognize the different needs our kids have, that they come and they need to be their authentic selves when they show up and truly who they are. And I think that belonging is such a key piece to that. So recognizing the stories, going back to that question, recognizing the stories of other, I think also the humility and the vulnerability and willingness to share part of our own stories as principals, maybe sharing from a time that you just missed it. I shared earlier, like an example that it had to shift my thinking, right? So leverage the power of story to make it very real. You can blog about your building, but all of a sudden you've got a video from kids about your building. Don't tell me that one's not much more effective. Why? Because when you put the faces and the smiles to the story, or the connection, or honestly the struggle to the connection and to the story, it has a very, very different impact. Stories is such a valuable tool as principals. We can look at it in so many different ways. We can look at it from the end of, here's this person, like what happens? Like think about that teacher in your building, that teacher that year after year after year after year, we're complaining about to ourselves or to our spouse. We're bringing up, oh, that person, they're always so negative. They're always so negative. Let me point out a couple things. Number one, at one point in time, somebody looked across the table and said, that's the person I want. That's the person I want. And now 3 years later, 5 years later, that's the person I'm complaining about. Isn't that interesting? Like something happened there. Now, I'm not justifying it. I get negativity. I understand that. But what happened there? There's a story there. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's just, but there's a story there. How do we get to know the story to understand the why, right? In that case. And I think, from the leadership end, that power of story, also the power of stories to sharing what you do. Educators are such humble people on the whole. And by the way, don't ever lose sight of that. Nobody likes that boastful person. But with humility often doesn't become the like, hey, look at us, look what we're doing. And that notion of sharing your story and being so proud. And I'm not talking pride and ego, look at me. I'm talking about look at them. As principals, how you sharing the story of the greatness that's happening every day in your building, right? If you're not walking around like it's the greatest place on earth and people want to be, I think about my principals that I love and care about. I think about all the time, they're just talking about their stories, talking about the awesomeness, right? And when we think about it, like your community, how do they really know what happens? When I think about the story, I'll just give you a real quick practical example here. When I think about, like my own building where my daughter went to middle school last year. Just a quick example. Great building, a great district. But to be honest, I think during instructional time, I was probably in there in her 3 years, probably for a total of 15 minutes, maybe. So I didn't get to see the inner workings. And I loved one of the years her teachers got together on her team. And I've taught middle school. I've been a middle school principal. I get the challenge when you have very large teams. And her team said something like, we've got about 160 kids on our team and we want to communicate to you well. So we're going to try something this year. And I'm like, all right, well, that's also modeling to parents. This is parent night, by the way. We're going to model to parents like we're trying to continue to improve. We're trying to look back. What we're going to do is we don't have time to be like, we're telling you everything we're doing every single day because we're on our feet and we're running all day. I respected that. I get that. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to snap a picture just for each day. We're going to just try and snap a couple pictures of our kids and we're going to put it in our locked down app over here so that when you get home at night or your kid gets home at night, you can pull it out. And because here's what would happen. There's my daughter who loves school, loves her teacher. She would come home and, Paisley, how's your day today? It was good. What'd you do today? Nothing. And she loves her school, right? All of a sudden, the power of story. And say, that's really funny, Paige, because it looks like this morning in science class, you were, what happens? She can't stop talking about it. As a dad, you know what that does? It also builds trust. Mm-hmm. Why? Because every day I'm seeing greatness happen in that school. I'm seeing greatness happening in classrooms. It's giving talking points of things to ask about at home. But you know what it is? It's the power of story. And when I hear my daughter then sharing those stories about what's happening, I get a viewpoint of what's actually happening in a building that I'm not going to be in instructionally. The power of story is so vital. We got to share our stories as principals, share from our building. And I'm not talking pride or ego. So on the outside, they have a clue as to what's actually happening. If not, they picture what happened in their schools 40 years ago. And we know that a lot has changed in that time. The power of story is absolutely incredible. Put the faces to it. And by the way, we're not just talking about principals sharing a story. Let the kids share the stories and highlight that and amplify that. Do we have to consider privacy? Do we have to consider all those things? Of course we do. But we can certainly walk through to amplify the voices of kids, to share what's happening and sharing our story. Such a powerful tool we have as principals.
Love it. Amplify the voices of kids. It's great stuff. We can go on and on with that. I'm in the phase where I just started going overboard. But before I do, I'm known to take a commercial break, because even though we're not at the end, I know that you and I both know that folks don't stay on the whole time. You're a presenter and you're an author, so I want people before we end. So to the fam out there, we're nowhere near over, right? Nowhere near. But I want you to know how to get in touch with Tom, because I'm sure that there are people right now. I need him in my school, and I might add, convocation speaking. He's the master, right? That's what he does, right? And there's a lot of video footage on YouTube that you can check him out as a convocation presenter. But that's not all the presenting that he does. But I'm particularly intrigued by his convocation messages. But how did folks get in touch with you and book you, buy your books, bring you in, all that good stuff?
Sure. So I'd say check out thomascmurray.com. That's my personal website. I'd also encourage you, though, to take a look of kind of my day job, Future Ready Schools, doing a lot of work there, futureready.org, allfored.org. But from a personal end, you can also find me on X, Thomas C. Murray, Blue Sky as well. Just joined that recently. We're going to figure that one out. Facebook, all the things. Just look up Thomas C. Murray or Thomas C. Murray EDU on a few of them there as well. And would love to connect with you. And part of that is love to learn from you. When I look through, see the comments, shout out to Rachel, who gave a shout out, got to connect with her, film a podcast with her earlier. I see Josh, I see Frank, I see all sorts of folks that I've also had the ability to learn and grow from. And so, this work is not about me. I appreciate the connections, appreciate the thoughts, but one of my passions is connecting educators to uplift, but also to lovingly challenge at the same time, because that's what I need as well.
Love it. Love it. And then here's the book, y'all. There's other books he wrote. You go to Amazon and you'll see the ones he's co-written, but this is the one that he wrote solo, personal, and authentic. Again, designing learning experiences that impact a lifetime. You can go to Amazon right now and get yourself a copy. Secondarily, AP and New Principals Academy is sponsored by What is My Value to the Teachers I Supervise Instructionally. It will drop, as the young people say, on Monday, December 16th. But you can go ahead and order it right now, as thousands of you have been doing. Amazon, ASCD.org, who is my publisher, BarnesandNoble.com, or anywhere that education books are sold online, you can get yourself a copy. So what is my value to the teachers? What is my value instructionally to the teachers I supervise? Get yourself a copy. I think that's that. It seems like there's something else on my mind, but let me keep going. If it comes back to me, I'll jump on it. I wanted to switch gears a little bit, but I am going to get to those talking points. I'm thinking about Tom. I'm just looking to see where I am. Okay, I'm thinking about the time of year we're in. We're at that point where folks are like on countdown. Some of them were actually finished. The folks with the 3 weeks off, but others, they counting down. Like, I need a break. I said in the monologue, even though folks will be on a break, I'm sure that folks will be plotting and planning. It may not necessarily be with the computer, but it may be mentally, whatever it is. But here's the reality, as you know. There are a lot of leaders in all leadership capacities and teachers, but my focus is on the leaders because of the name of the platform, who are overwhelmed, frustrated, overworked. The city that produced me, the city where I was born and raised, I'm really not born there, but I say I was born to the city next door to it, East Orange, New Jersey, but I was actually born in Orange, but I claim East Orange. And then I was raised in East Orange. One of my buddies who's a principal there, but I think I can speak for pretty much all the principals in this district. They have a budget deficit that they didn't know they had until the year started, and they laid off 100 teachers. They're effective today, but many of the teachers knew it was coming, so they jumped ship. So my buddy, who's been on here a couple of times, I won't say his name since I'm talking negative, but I'm talking real. He has 10 vacancies right now. He's a high school principal. No, a 6 to 12 principal. But he will have more effective when he gets back to work Monday with the additional layoffs of teachers who did not find a job. So there's frustration. I certainly wouldn't ask you a question on resolving that. I want to stay with the frustration part. There's frustration. He's frustrated, right? Make no mistake about it. He's overwhelmed, right? Some of his students have to spend time in the gym, right? He's overworked because he's also in classrooms teaching, right? So, but then there are others out here with their own situations who are feeling frustrated, who are feeling overworked, who are feeling overwhelmed, if not discouraged. What is Thomas C. Murray's message to a leader who got into this business for the right reasons? I just got in here because I wanted to lead children and play my role in helping them to maximize their potential. But as life is unfolding, that is so far removed from what I want to spend my time doing that I'm doing all these other ancillary and tertiary things that have nothing to do with my motivation for going to grad school in the first place, to become an administrator. What is Thomas C. Murray's message to that leader who's probably watching right now?
Yeah. So first, I'm going to acknowledge the very, very real struggles like you're talking about, and say that there's no easy answers to that. There's no flip the switch. There's no buy this book. There's no, just do this, do it that way, or just work on culture and everything will be great. Like, there's very significant real world issues in a profession that fewer and fewer people want to go in a profession where the frustrations seem to be increasing. So first, I want to tell it like it is. That is very real, very real. So here's my thoughts on that as an individual, not talking like as a system change, right? You know what the red car effect is? Have you heard that?
No.
So here's the red car effect. As I'm starting to think about my next book, I'm going to include this piece. Here's why. Here's the red car effect. It's essentially a scientific study idea that means this. If I were to say to you, let's pretend we drove to our high schools this morning, we were principals, we drove back home, and I were to say to you today, all right, let's say you drove around this morning. I know you've been sitting in your chair all day, so that's not going to be related because you've been speaking all day. But let's say in a given day, I come to you and I said, all right, I'm going to give you $100 for every red car that you can tell me you saw today. You just have to identify what it was, like roughly, and you tell me what it was. Here's the thing. You wouldn't be able to do it. Now, if I were to have said to you in the morning, all right, throughout the day today, any red car that you see on your way to work or on your way home, I'm going to give you $100. You just have to tell me what the kind of make and model is. You wouldn't have missed one. So hear me out. Did it change the number of red cars? No, they were always there. Here's the lesson in that. We get more of what we look for. So in those schools that you were just talking about, those frustrations, I'm not going to downplay them at all. That is very real. That principal that you're talking about is definitely overworked, definitely has much on their plate. Here's the flip side to that. I guarantee you there's also greatness still happening in that building.
Yeah.
I guarantee you there's still kids thriving in that building. I guarantee you there's still great lessons happening in that building. I'm not demeaning all the struggles or the frustration. Here's what I would first say. You're going to get more of what you look for. So be intentional about walking that. If you're feeling that frustration, which I think we all do in different points in different ways, then I'm going to have to be really intentional that day about saying, I'm going to go find greatness. I'm going to go walk into that kindergarten class because I recognize my mindset is not where it should be right now. And I've got a staff meeting coming up that's really important. I'm going to go out, hang out with 5-year-olds. And I'm going to help them bring me back to, as my buddy Jimmy Costas would say, what I said in that interview chair on why I want to do what I want to do. Is it easy? No. Is it this quick fix to these things? No. But I really believe the red car effect from a psychological end is really important, that you will get more of what you look for. Now, here's the flip side of that. You expect to see negativity, you're going to see more of it. You expect to see nonsense, you're going to see more of it. So as principals, when you walk into classrooms, what's your lens? A good friend of mine talks all the time about you've got to choose your lens each day. And I really believe that. Now, it's not saying that we become naive to those things that are very real. I don't mean that. But I believe as principals, when we get up in the morning, it is really, it is vital on our end that we choose the lens of saying, no matter how hard today is, I know there's going to be great things happening in my school. No matter how hard these meetings are, how many classes I have to cover, there's still going to be greatness happening with kids. And I'm going to go home exhausted, and we've got to figure out these struggles whole scale. But I'm also going to find some of that greatness today to bring me a smile, even if it's for 5 minutes, even if it's for 10 minutes of hanging with kids, sitting side by side with them at lunch, because we know sometimes I'm covering that lunch as that principal. So instead of just standing there eating by myself in the corner, I'm going to sit down in between a whole bunch of kids because I know those kids are going to make me laugh, those middle schoolers, whatever that might be. You get more of what you look for. And so find the greatness that is still happening in the midst of chaos, in the midst of, as our world changes and all the politics around all the things that are coming, like find the greatness in the midst of chaos because it still exists. Acknowledge it, recognize it, amplify it, talk about it, because it'll help quell some of the frustrations and negativities. I'm not saying it's going away. I'm not saying it fixes everything, but as a leader, that is something that I can be intentional about. And I just used the word intentional, I think 4 times in the last 5 minutes. And I will say the greatest schools in the world don't happen by chance. They happen when we're intentional about it. And so as leaders, you've got to choose your lens each day. You've got to seek out the greatness, even in the midst of your worst days.
You singing my song. You are really singing my song. You talk about sitting at tables in the cafeteria and the fam that's watching, my regulars, they know that was how I lived. I'm sitting at a table. I'm rotating by the day, but I'm sitting at a table literally every day. And I refuse to engage students in a conversation about school. That's the furthest thing from my mind. It's their time now to kind of let their hair down. And I'll just, either I'm sitting there and listen and learn, or I'll just participate in the conversation that they're having. Or if there's some news in the world that's related to like entertainment, like hip hop, Drake and Kendrick Lamar battling. If that was happening during my era of being a principal, then that would be part of our conversation, right? So that's me looking for that positive that I can just engage in the sea of the other stuff that I'm dealing with at the time. So I love it. Or going to certain classrooms. Certainly the dance class was a regular place for me because I'm looking at my students in a different regard from the academic learning. And it was just so much fun to see a student who I know academically, but seeing that youngster engaged in modern dance, and that may not necessarily be his or her norm, but it was really fascinating for me. So those are just areas that I look for to do the same thing that you're discussing here. So I appreciate you sharing all of that. That's my song there.
Yeah, one more quick piece, because I actually want to amplify some things that I'm seeing in the comments here. And as we were talking, it was another point that I wanted to make. And it's you need to find your group, your affinity group, your community. Lots of folks in here talking about as Black educators, they come specifically to this because you get each other, you understand some of the struggles. And so finding your groups, it's fascinating. As principals, we work with people all day long. We work with thousands of people. Some of you work with thousands of people in a given day, yet it can be the loneliest place in the world, right? And so find your people, find your groups that have your back, that you can go to just let it all out when those days happen, because they're going to happen, but are going to also love you the same and build you back up and encourage you, because you cannot go at this work alone. Finding your networks like here, finding your groups that you can connect with, that you can just keep it real with, is a vital part of leadership. Otherwise, it is way too hard to go at this work alone.
Love it. We're in a very difficult time. I'm not going to say that things just got difficult. Things have been difficult, particularly in communities that look like the ones that I worked in for all the years that I worked in them. But when you talk about now the volume of I'm just looking at somebody that mentioned East Orange, to Neil Rainey, who's down to volunteer. Yeah, all right. Who's down to volunteer in East Orange, right? When you look at the volume of under-credentialed teachers who are in classrooms, particularly in urban school districts where like I just mentioned, East Orange, which is where Tennille Rainey is from, Newark, East Orange area, and also my buddy principal. I don't mind saying his name, Principal Vincent Stallings. People that know me know I was talking about him anyway. So who are in these predicaments with so many folks out, and then you get people, but they're not credentialed, they're not qualified to be in these classrooms with young people relative to content. They may be qualified to engage them in some conversations, but eventually we got to teach them. I'm not looking for you to solve the world's problems on that one. I'm just looking for, what is your advice? What is your wisdom? What are your words of encouragement for that leader that's on here right now, or who will see the video later, that yes, that's me. I'm urban, I'm rural, and I got folks in there with emergency certification. They're not qualified to be in these classrooms, but yet I have the pressure of raising these test scores with these folks that know nothing about this work. What do you say?
So it's the exact conversation that I was having the other night with a principal that I coach in an urban district in Georgia. And we were getting exactly to the heart of that. Her building, I want to say, is 40 to 45% folks that never got their teaching certification. So those challenges are very real when you start talking about instructional strategies and pedagogy. And many of us go back to our work and our student teaching and all the professional learning that we had leading up to that point, where she's got a whole bunch of folks and a whole bunch of staff that they did something somewhere else, and now they're teacher of language arts in this grade level. So let's first, again, acknowledge, number one. Number two, one of the pieces we were talking about, like, how do we get through that, is number two is recognize, like, we don't fix this overnight. So give yourself some grace in this process. This is not something that you check the box about. This is something, again, about being intentional. It is something that takes time. Here's a quick strategy that I would say. I think one of the things we do in education all the time is we tell people what we don't want. We don't want to teach it that way. We don't want you to lecture all the time. We don't want you to do one size fits all. We don't want you to do this. We're not always so good at showing people, here's what it can look like. Watch this. This is a different way to do it. We're not always so good at that side. We tell them what we don't want, and we know that people can't hit targets that they don't know exist, right? We have this bias in our own mind, this confirmation, this curse of knowledge. There's another, I would love to dive into that. We have this curse of knowledge of, we make all these assumptions when we talk, when we interact with people, when we're teaching, right? And so with that, one of the things that I don't think we do a good job of, and I'm just speaking on the whole, is allow teacher, not allow, that wouldn't be the right word, is to provide time for teachers to watch other teachers teach. So one of the things, and I'm not taking credit for this because this came from some of my staff members that I thought were incredible. This is their idea. Some of my staff members, when I was an elementary principal, said, hey, Tom, I'd really love the opportunity to be able to go see so-and-so. And what I realized is you had people that had been teaching down the hall from each other for a decade, yet never had actually seen each other teach. It hit me hard when I was first a principal. Again, when I'd been in a middle school, I thought everybody, here it is, curse of knowledge. I assumed, there it is, everybody taught like me. This is just the one way to teach. And what really hit me when it became that first year AP is, wow, I was just in 3 different language arts classes, 3 totally different styles. They're all effective in different ways. When do we get teachers to do that? And so one of the strategies that the principal and I worked on is how can she create this environment, this culture where people are going to learn from one another? Because as a principal, like, let's be real, there's only so many hours in the day, and your instructional leadership, like your new book, absolutely front and center. But the reality is, if I'm the principal and I got 150 teachers, like, you could spend one day per teacher all year long, and like, that's all you did, right? And so that's part of that reality. And so what we worked on with her as a strategy is being very, very clear. What I'm about to share is not supervisory in nature. This is not a gotcha. But what we did is we had each teacher then say, all right, give a list of a couple teachers you'd like to go see. You'd like to go watch in action. And I'm not talking hours at a time. I'm talking like a 30-minute block. Then what we did as a staff is we came up with some questions, because we never wanted it to come across wrong. We came up with some ideas of, well, what should we know? So they had to pick part of the lesson that they watched their colleague, and they had to ask, Why did you teach, or why did you use the strategies that you used at that moment in time? So it wasn't a like, why did you do it that way? It was getting behind the pedagogy of why did you instructionally do it, not from an accusatory end, but from a questioning end, just helping them think through. Then they had to share, here's a couple pieces that I really enjoyed. I like how you greeted every kid at the door, knew by name, by face, all those pieces. They had to come up with a couple positives, and then they would ask some questions. And then what that we had previously outlined. And then they would also say it was their power to say, I have another idea from you. Come up with one idea based on what you saw that teacher could do and share that idea. So we had colleague to colleague then. It was 30 minutes of kind of this mini observation with a set list of questions and ideas that were driven by teachers. And then they'd come back and spend a good 10, 15 minutes just kind of working through it together. It didn't come to me as the principal. It didn't go in an evaluation. And what started to happen was then the next faculty meeting, I'll say, all right, we had 10 different observations from peer observation. And I don't even think we used observation, if I think correctly. I think we called it peer something different because we didn't want it associated with observations and evaluations. Peer connections. That's what it was. Peer connections this month. Who can give a colleague a shout out? Hands go up instantly. And yeah, I was in her classroom, and here's one that it was so awesome. What she did was this. And all of a sudden we got colleagues that are helping colleagues, building colleagues up. What does that do to culture, by the way? Right. And what does that do from instruction? And when it really hit me is one day I walk into the faculty room, or if the faculty lounge, I go in there to get a drink real quick. I open it up and I hear 3 of my teachers talking instruction, talking strategy over there in the corner, totally not set up. Like a few times after this, thinking to myself, we've started to shift to a culture of high quality instruction where that's the stuff that they were also talking about. I want them also talking the personal stuff. I also want them getting to know their families. Absolutely. But when you start hearing in the hallways conversations on strategy and instructional ideas from each other, all of a sudden it's not just me as the instructional leader in the building. Now I'm leveraging the vast, incredible pieces throughout my staff. But here's what I'll also tell you, to be keeping it totally real. I had a couple teachers in my building that nobody asked to see, who came to me and said, why didn't you assign anybody to me? That's a really interesting conversation. And I will tell you, it was not 2 teachers that everybody enjoys being around. It also showed me that people in our buildings, they know. Yeah. How was it that by chance, all of my teachers ended up really asking to see people that were, for the most part, really pretty effective? Which was a really interesting undercurrent, was a really interesting conversation. And now for me, I didn't dictate who had to go where. They put in, here's who I'd like to go see. And I forced them to go see somebody at a different grade level, see them teaching a different content area, what that might look like. And I share all that. Yes. Does it take some time logistically to behind the scenes? Did I cover some classes? Did I have, we were fortunate to have a building sub. Now, again, the issue that you were talking about earlier, we don't have extra people flying around there, but are there ways for folks to be able to do that? And then that became part of the culture of, we try to do 1 per quarter. Each quarter, I get to go observe a colleague, give some positive feedback, offer some ideas, and it has nothing to do with my evaluation or observation. I'm simply going to learn from the other expertise of the professionals in the building.
Wow. Good stuff. Good stuff. You know, I'm looking at the time, and I do want to get to those 3 talking points that you sent me. Let me go to them. You indicated the importance of empathy-driven, equity-focused leadership. Now I know we've touched on a lot of that in the context of the time we've been together anyway. But anything that you want to add, particularly on that empathy side?
Yeah, I think we did hit that pretty hard. And I would just say it starts with each one of us. It starts about getting to know the stories of our people. Again, not lowering the expectation. The moment we start to say, wow, that kid's really been through something in life, there's no way I understand why they're not going to be on grade level. I understand why they're going to struggle to learn to read. Now we're part of the problem. And we got to recognize that as well. Empathy interviews are such a key tool, but going back to just the power of the story, looking in the mirror, recognizing you see the world differently than the people that you're serving. How do you make sure that the people you're serving feel like they belong? How do they feel like this culture of trust where they can open up, they can keep it real? And it's never a gotcha, but it's a I gotcha.
Yeah.
Right? And
yeah.
I think that's a key piece to that.
You know, as I look at the word equity, I got a off script question. I don't know if you've experienced this, whether it be in your private work, or your day job, future ready schools. But let me share this with you. A lot of clients post George Floyd, meaning post May 25, 2020, will ask me in what became these Zoom meetings. Prior to the pandemic, we weren't having a pre-meeting via Zoom. It was a phone call, but now, pretty much a phone call. But anyway, these pre-meetings, many times a client will say to me, because they know my work, they know what I'm passionate about. So they'll say, could you not mention equity while you're here? And the only time that baffled me was the first time. So, we're talking since 2020, that doesn't baffle me anymore. Now I anticipate it and I'm ready to respond to it. But they would say, could you not speak or mention the word equity or talk about equity? So I'll go along with it 100% of the time and say, why not? And they'll tell me that it could cause they'll have to do damage control when I leave, both internally and externally, because they'll leak out into the community, and then they'll know that the district brought in somebody who was an advocate of equity. So then I'll give them a definition. I've taken all these definitions of equity that I've heard over the years, and as we do in math, I reduce them to its lowest common denominator, meeting the children where they are as they are, right? We can build from there, but at its core, and we talk about the classroom, meeting the children where they are as they are. And then I'll flip it to them. What part of that definition are you struggling with? Right. And then it's like Ralph Cramden, hamina, hamina, hamina. It's you can't fight that, and see, and the beauty of it for me is there is no universal definition of equity. You can't go to like a Carol Dweck source for growth mindset and say, okay, here's the definition. Here's what it means. No, everybody's got an interpretation of what it means. So, and that's why I said, let me strip it down, meeting the children where they are, as they are. I'm yet to find anybody fight me on that. Now, I may want to bring in other components of it, but we'll have that conversation. But with that at the core, no one's ever fought me. So what my conclusion was, well, you never really knew what it was, right? Or you went on what you heard in the media, your media, the street, the community, whatever it was. But to me, I have a presentation that's called Equity, the best friend of every student in the building, the best friend of each student in the building. With all that said, do you have those issues?
It's fascinating you said that. And I will say, absolutely, I do in certain parts of the country, because people know that I do equity work. We've had things at board meetings in certain senses because of a future ready end that we're equity focused organization. It comes down to the politics of it. I was working with a district down south in a large state. Take your guess. And they said, before we bring you in, we have a statement we need to read you to the board. And it was essentially, we don't go along with this. You are not allowed to refer to this, and this. Exactly the same thing. Now, I will tell you, I'm guessing I don't get it as much as you do as a black male coming in to share that. I, as a white male, believe I need to stick to my core values and my purpose. I love your definition there. I always refer to it as getting people what they need when they need it. In that sense, looking at it as access and opportunity. So I'm not going to change my core values. That I can tell you. That's a non-negotiable for me. There's times where I have similar conversations to what you just shared, saying like, are you against access? Like kids in terms of coursework? Oh, no, we're not against that. Are you against opportunities for kids? Oh, no, we're not against that. All right, tell me exactly what you're about. It always comes down to, it's this notion that they saw on some talking point on some news channel that like, you're going to take from my kid to give somebody else, and my kid's not going to get enough. That's what it boils down to, right? And so helping them, to your point, get through the language, because we do buzzword bingo. A lot of what we do in education boiling down to, here's what I'm talking about. And we talk about access, we talk about opportunity, we talk about belonging, those pieces there. What I have found in most places, oh, well, yeah, that's important to us. I'll give you an example. We're coming out with a poll at All for Ed. I'm super excited about this, that actually polled all across the states. And it was actually a Democrat and Republican pollster working together for us. And the results we're going to release are fascinating about what resonates with people and what, no, people are actually okay with these words and this verbiage. But here's what it showed. taking another example of that is like SEL, because I've gotten that with SEL. When I talk about the whole child and social emotional learning, that's getting tied in those same conversations of like, oh, that's just underscoring for equity. Oh, that social emotion. So that's been added as a piece to that. But what it boils down to is folks just don't understand it, right? And so our communication really matters, because as an example, and I can't give away this poll idea of the year thing that's coming, but I'll give you an example. You say SEL and a lot of the public is like, oh no, we don't have time for that stuff. You say mental health and they're like, absolutely, we need it. And it's like,
yeah.
So you know what that boils down to? Our verbiage matters. Our language matters. So
Right.
in those areas of struggle, and yes, I've absolutely seen it. And yes, I get it. I'd say probably 1 out of every 10 times down there comes up of like, all right, we're going to need to see your slides, or we're going to see this piece over here as a presenter. You've probably gotten that there too, right?
Oh, yeah.
And bringing it down to, all right, well, here's what we're going to actually talk about, and really boiling it down and making sure that the language and the politics are not getting in the way, so that the actual work that needs to happen absolutely can happen, so that we can help districts, help kids and adults, by the way, get what they need when they need it.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, it's a new challenge. You know, I mean, it's 4 years later now, but it's new.
And that challenge is not going away.
No,
That challenge is not going away.
Not going anywhere. Not going anywhere. So let's go to this next one. We're winding down. And we probably exhausted that one. The power of humility, vulnerability, and modeling expectations for those we lead. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think we hit on that. You know, recognizing as a leader, if it's becoming about me and it's becoming about ego, we're completely misguided. And here's the reality. People see right through that. You know, there is incredible strength in humility and in vulnerability. And as a leader, it took me a long time to learn that. It really did. But recognize, because you're balancing the like competence. I get to work with superintendents all across the country, and every superintendent in our country is literally one board meeting away from needing a new job.
Yeah.
Right? And so they're balancing, like they can't look, and they're not talking like looking incompetent. It's looking at recognizing you're human. You're going to screw it up. You're going to make mistakes, and like give yourself some grace in those moments and just keep it real. Part of the reason I use the word authentic is you have to be authentic in your leadership, right? If not, people see right through that. And as principals, keep it real. When things aren't great, you can't sugarcoat it. Just keep it real. People respect transparency and telling it like it is. And you can do it in a loving, building up, encouraging way, even through the struggles, but we've got to keep it real. We've got to be authentic.
Gotta be. We're just about done, folks. Let me just put on this last one. And I know you wanted to expound on this one, developing future-ready leaders, and you indicated, and then you can talk a little bit about future-ready schools, all for ed, and whatever else you wanted to include with that.
Sure. Yeah, so I'll throw that one out there. I know I've mentioned a few times. All for Ed's the home organization, the bipartisan nonprofit out of Washington D.C. We raise the money to do what we do, but we are mission driven on supporting students that have been traditionally marginalized in those groups and those communities. And so we raise the money to do that. Everything from advocating on the Hill and supporting. From policy to practice. And so I encourage you to check out all the number 4ed.org. You'll see that. I'll just give you one quick resource as an example. One of our projects that we did a number of years ago was really around diverse images, because what we find is that places struggle with like stock photos, stock images, and they weren't representative of what our children across our country look like. They weren't representative of what our urban schools look like. Go to any of those, you know, when you think about bias or any of those stock photo type sites, it was not what our kids and our families look like. And so one of our projects, you can download for free and use diverse images of students, royalty free, all those pieces. Why? So that your marketing and your publications can resemble what your children look like, right? And so it's one just really quick example of just something super usable today that you can use. From a future ready end, we have frameworks and tools and resources. We're practitioner driven in the work. We do lots of ongoing professional learning, webinars and case studies and things just to support. We also do a variety of events. Our events are free. Why? Because we don't want cost to be a barrier to get in the way of getting the support that you need. We're constantly creating tools and resources, and we work side by side with practitioners. Having been a practitioner before going there, I'm constantly a voice. We do not want to be the 50,000 foot view from Washington, D.C., never having been there, never having done that, telling our incredible educators what to do. That will never be us.
Yeah.
And so with that, working side by side, lots of tools, lots of resources. We're continuing to dive into that. And so check out futureready.org and allfored.org. And a shout out. I'm really proud to call that place home.
Wow. Good stuff. Good stuff. You all got the information. It's that time when we go to our rapid fire. Let me just get this screen right. Yeah. 20 questions. Rapid fire, one sentence max. You can even reduce it to one.
I don't know what's coming, but let's do it.
Yeah, I use the same ones with everybody because everybody's got different responses. So I find it fascinating. Here we go. And by the way, if you feel yourself inserting the comma, then I say too long. Here we go. Is education on the right path for underserved children in America?
I have a lot of hope, but there's a lot of need.
Can true equity occur in America's schools for Black, brown, and other underserved students?
Yes, but massive changes need to occur.
Does Thomas C. Murray's work contribute to the progress we desperately need?
That's why I do what I do.
If you could do a reset on your life, would your line of work be different or the same?
Absolutely the same. Wouldn't change it.
Why do you continue to do this work?
For the kids that need us most.
What particularly fires you up within the work that you do?
Looking into the faces of the children that are so successful, the children that need to be successful, and the children that I can help be successful. It's all about kids.
What do you dislike about the work you do?
The politics, the nonsense, the egos, and the pride.
What has been your greatest victory in this work thus far?
Helping others be successful in what they do.
What has been your greatest mistake in this work thus far?
Pride, ego, looking in the mirror and not realizing that I was at fault or it was I needed to change some things.
What has been your greatest challenge in this work thus far?
I'm waiting for the buzzer to go off. I would say getting past my own mindset that needed to change at times.
Are you proud of your first year as an assistant principal?
I'm really proud of that first year, but I will say I failed early and often.
Are you proud of your first year as a principal?
Same thing, but failed early and often.
Who inspires you in your work?
If you're looking for specific names, Joe Sanfilippo, Jimmy Casas, Ken Shelton, my boys that I reference, folks like that as well. But who inspires me is the folks that continue day after day to run through walls that need to be run through, the children that find a way to get up and do whatever they need to do, even in the midst of adversity. I'll give a shout out to my boy Inky Johnson, who wrote the foreword to my book. Somebody that faces challenges far beyond that I ever faced in life, yet he punches it in the nose, loves it, and walks through it and finding a way to do that.
Love it. What book would you recommend for our viewers this afternoon?
I'd recommend your book because I truly believe, and you didn't set me up to do that, but I think that instructional leadership as principals, how do we do that in the balance of everything else that we have there going on as well? I'll throw out Culturized by Jimmy Casas, such an incredible book. Recalibrate, if you're feeling like you need to recalibrate your brain, from Jimmy. I'll also give a shout out to Joe Sanfilippo's Lead from Where You Are. And one more for you, AI is all the rage. My boy Ken Shelton wrote the book, The Promises and Perils of AI in Education. Ready? Ethics and equity have entered the chat. If you're looking for a book on AI, go with that one right there.
I love it. I love it. What do you want to accomplish that you haven't accomplished yet?
Continue to be a better father in everything that I do.
Are you satisfied with where you are professionally?
I love what I do professionally, absolutely, but I think there's still work that needs to be done.
What would you say to an AP out there who continues to face closed doors to the principalship?
That's deep. I would say continue to try, continue to find a way, and you'll get to where you're meant to be.
What would you say to a leader out there who's lost their leadership passion?
Bring it back to our why and our purpose. I know it's easy to say, but what'd you say in that interview chair, as my boy Jimmy Casas says, and to reflect and to recalibrate when needed.
What would you say to a leader out there who's lost their leadership confidence?
I'd say the exact same thing, but to find a network of people to love on you, to lovingly challenge you, and to support you.
And lastly, if Thomas C. Murray was a word in a dictionary, what would be your definition?
Somebody that failed often, loved hard, but left an impact. That would be my hope, I should say, sir. My hope is what I would say.
Love it. Let me be the first to applaud you. But the fam out here has already started. The fam, they already know how we applaud. And then I'll tell the newbies, we give our guests our favorite emojis and just put a lot of them on the screen. And I see that you all, we got a lot of them on here. So y'all, those of you who are new, if this session resonated with you, if you found it useful, if you found that there were aspects of it you could take back to your work, if not all of it, if it was just good stuff, give us your emojis, give us your favorite emojis, let them fly, as I see you're doing. They coming strong too. That's good stuff. Yeah, that's the way we applaud, since we don't have sound and all that kind of stuff on StreamYard. So keep them coming, and let me grab my emoji, my Louisville Slugger. You hit it out the park. I guess I'm Larry Doby today. So you in you Francisco in the city edition, right? So hit it out the park, and grand slam every time you went to the plate, man. And this was great stuff. Great stuff.
I appreciate you, my brother. I appreciate the work that you do. Thank you for challenging my thinking. Thank you for helping me learn along the way. And to every educator that's still here 2 hours later, much love to you all. Make sure to also take care of yourself this holiday season. Make sure to disconnect. There is always more work to do, always something to come back to, always some more things that are on your plate. Make sure to love your people hard, and make sure that you're keeping your priorities in check with your family, your own children, the people that you love. Make sure that they're not always secondary to that. And so much love to y'all. Thanks for tuning in.
That's the message right there. That was a mic drop. Yeah, good stuff. I hope everybody heard that, including me. Right, that was a mic drop. Appreciate that, Tom. Appreciate it. Hey, folks, let me close out. Tell them one more time. How can they reach you?
Yeah, stay connected. ThomasCMurray.com. Links to everything off of that. Find me on social media, Thomas C. Murray. Reach out anytime, and love y'all. Appreciate it.
There we go. Stay with me when I go off. Just stay there so we can wrap offline for a second. Hey, folks, I appreciate you being here again for week 242. Every time I tell this to people when I'm on the road, they're like, consecutive? Yeah, haven't missed a week. I've missed a lot of important things. I've missed some funerals, including today. I've missed a lot of things, but I'm just committed to this. I'm not making excuses for it. I'm just committed to this Saturday Academy. So we do it. And here we are completing 242. So next week for 243. And by the way, Christmas is not on a Saturday this year, but those of you who have been rocking with me all along, you know that we do this on Christmas Day. New Year's Day nor Eve are on a Saturday this year, but you all know that on New Year's Eve, we've done this. On New Year's Day, we've done this, right? So with those holidays don't stop this show. We keep doing this, man. We trying to doing our little small part of impacting the world. So next week for week 243, I got 3 guests coming on. Dr. Maria Lewis, who's a former principal in Prince William County, Virginia, current director of teaching and learning in Spotsylvania County, Virginia, along with Principal Cecilia Parker, award-winning principal of the year, Spring ISD, that's in Texas, and Principal David, man, I hope I get his name right, Schexnader, Louisiana Principal of the Year 2023. So I had 24 on here about a month or so ago. This is 23 NASSP, so secondary, and he's also nationally distinguished school leader. So the 3 of them will be on, and we'll be continuing what we do, just bringing that information, helping folks to get better at what they do. I wish something like this existed when I was a principal, or even when I was aspiring to be a principal, but these things weren't created yet. So wasn't no social media. But anyway, join us next week, week 243. Every Saturday morning, once again, 10 o'clock, Sean Hurt. This is Facebook Live, Eastern Time. Sean Hurt, 10 o'clock. Create and Educate with Dr. Sheikah Houston and Dr. Tammy Taylor, 10:30. AP at New Principals Academy, myself, 10:55. And then PDP Podcast with Josh Tovar and Dr. Madi Moreno, Sunday, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. The new joint, 2 more days, y'all. Monday, December 16th is coming. So those of you that did all that pre-ordering, because there's a few thousand of y'all out there, I appreciate that. it'll be available. So it'll be shipped to you, I should say. So, but if you haven't pre-ordered, get yourself a copy right now. Just go on to Amazon, get yourself a copy. We were at number 5 bestseller administration when I came on. Take me back to number 1. Because you take me to number 1, you're taking us to number 1. Because the information was not written for me. The information was written for you. So take us back to number 1. That means that folks are believing in this product. And I appreciate you and thank you for it, by the way. And then all my other books are on Amazon as well. So, you know, I'm not going to waste the time and put all them books. It's my ASCD books. There's 10 altogether, but you know what they are. And if you don't, just put my name in the search, Baruti Kafele. Don't put principal. I don't know if I got to put principal in and see if they know me that way. But well, it probably come up with the Kafele. And then they're all there, right? Start registering now for my Summer Leadership Institute, which is called the Instructional Leadership Institute, July 15 and 16 in Raleigh, North Carolina. Go to principalkafele.com, scroll down to where it says Principal Kafele Announcements. Click that link, and then you can go ahead and register, and I'll see you in Raleigh, man. We're going to have a great time, 9 to 4, both days. We go on hard on instructional leadership. And by the way, you get a free copy of What is My Value Instructionally to the teachers you supervise. And the first 50 to register get a copy of the Principal 50, written by me as well back in 2015. Where we at? Subscribe to the AP and New Principals Academy YouTube channel. Once again, subscribe. We at 22,900 subscribers. So, you know, I ain't mad at you. You know, that's a good number, but I'm ready to get to 23,000 now. So we're at 22,900. Last time I checked, 22,970, right? So, let's take it up to 23,000, and then we'll start talking about 24. So subscribe to the AP and New Principals Academy YouTube channel. Make sure that you visit principalkafele.com just for all the other resources there. And then finally, as I always say, your diet. Eat right, y'all. People, every time they see me, when they haven't seen me in a while, oh my God, man, you lost all that weight. Yeah, man, because I want to live, you know, and that heart attack was my wake-up call. So I'm eating. I ain't gonna say I'm eating perfect. I'm eating right, but you know, the doctor, he shouldn't have told me that I can eat my other stuff in moderation, because I do. You know, so you know, I won't front in moderation. I just don't. You know, I'm not in there eating a whole cake no more. I'll get a slice. See, in the old day, I don't go in Dunkin' Donuts. I used to go there and get like 6 glazed, right? 6, yeah, 6. Right? Sodas, about 12 a day. Yeah, I love me some soda. I haven't had a drop of soda since the heart attack. So we're talking 9 years ago. Haven't had one donut in 9 years, right? I went cold turkey on all that stuff. Get your exercise in, man. You know, when I'm home like this, I do my 3 miles. You know, I go outside in the cold. I don't like the gym. When it's too cold, I'll go to the gym. But I'm getting it in. You got to get it in. And then lastly, your virus precautions, man. I live on airplanes, y'all. I got 1.5 million miles in 13 years. That's over 100,000 miles a year, right? I'm a bird. So I'm in the little plane with the sick people, man. So you got to make sure that you're doing well. I'm not going to give you advice on how to take care of yourself as far as your health and these viruses, but I'm going to say be conscious of it, be cognizant of it, that they're out here, all these different strains, and do what you got to do to take care of you, to preserve your life so that you can continue to lead these babies. Enough said. Listen, y'all, have a great week. Have an extraordinary week. Have your best week yet. Peace. Peace. Thumbs up. Cock that fist back. Count the 3. 1, 2, 3. Bam! I see y'all next Saturday, but you have a great week, and I see you then.
See you, everyone.